February 20th, 1920, 100 years ago last month. The early beginnings of Lutheran Church work, which led up to the establishment of St. Paul's congregation, date back to 1914. The Reverend Johann Olson, who was pastor at Brandt, held a number of services in Clear Lake from 1914 to 1916. From 1917 to 1918, there was just an occasional service conducted by a visiting pastor. Then in 1918, Reverend K.B. Voller, who had succeeded Reverend Olson at Brandt, began holding services. The records show that on February 11th, 1920, which was just 100 years ago last month, the Reverend Voller, August Krieger, O.O. Solom, Rudolph Heyman, August Olson, John Gold, Carl Johnson, J.A. Thronson, August Kraus, E.A. Engebretson, Chris Kittleson, Ole Story, G.O. Halverson, and S.E. Anderson met and organized St. Paul's Lutheran congregation. The Constitution was adopted on March 22nd of that same year, and the names of A. Carlson, J.H. Dudden, Carl Hildebrandt, and Hans Grotham also appear as charter members of the congregation. When St. Paul's congregation was first organized in 1920, services were conducted in the farmer's room of the courthouse from that date for a period of 14 years. At that time, they were notified that the farmer's room would no longer be available. Arrangements were made to hold church services in the Methodist Church from July 1st until September 1st. A rental fee of $2 per service was paid for the use of the Methodist Church. After the 1st of September, services were held in the City Hall until the first structure was ready for use the following year. Now, the old Methodist Church was where the new Methodist Church is now located. During all this time, the congregation had continually been looking forward to erecting a church of their own. The first move towards building a church was made at an annual meeting in December of 1923, when a committee consisting of C. Kittleson, J.A. Thronson, and B. Solom was appointed to look into a church site. No further reference towards building a church is made in the secretary book until the annual meeting in 1926, when the Board of Trustees was instructed to look into the matter of building a church. In December of 1930, the pastor appointed a committee consisting of S.E. Anderson, Carl Johnson, H.A. Halverson, P.C. Peterson, and C. Kittleson to investigate the possibility of erecting a church. A fund drive was now actually started towards building. Pledges totaling $1,750 was subscribed by the members of the congregation, and the Board of Trustees was instructed to make an application for a loan of $4,000 from the Church Extension Fund. Thorwald Thorson was engaged as the architect. As many remember, the year 1931 found the country in the midst of depression. So in August of that year, it was decided to defer the building plans until financial conditions were more favorable. At the annual meeting in December of 1934, the building committee was instructed to again start work towards a church. Early in 1935, the Ladies' Aid contributed much money to the purchase of the old church structure of the Blum Prairie Church. This church was located west of Toronto along Highway 28, where a cemetery is now located. On March 16, 1935, St. Paul's Lutheran submitted a successful bid of $250 for the church building and $25 for the church pews to Plum Prairie. Work was started immediately by dismantling the church and salvaging the materials for use in building a new church. Construction work on the new church started on May 28, 1935, based on plans furnished by Thorwald Thorson, the architect, and under the supervision of Ole Story. The cornerstone was laid at a special service on July 7, 1935, when Reverend Henry Solom, president of the South Dakota District, President of the South Dakota District, giving the sermon. That fall, the first service was held in the basement of the new building, and services were held in the basement for the next 5 years. In April of 1940, the building committee was instructed to obtain estimates on the cost of completing the church. And at a special meeting held on June 3, 1940, the committee was instructed to proceed with the completion of the church. The completed building was dedicated on June 29, 1941, with Reverend S.M. Moe, the second pastor of the congregation, acting as liturgist. For 20 years, this church, this new constructed church, served the needs of the members of St. Paul's. But in 1961, this present church was constructed and is now the one that is used. The old church was sold to the American Lutheran Church in Castlewood. There are current members of St. Paul's who are direct descendants of the original organizers of St. Paul's, and I would like to gather their names and how they are related. This information will be told in another history moment later on. And if you have a relative, grandfather, or grandchild, great-grandchild, sister, brother, whatever, please get a hold of me. I would love to have this information, and I would like to be able to, in future history moments, give that out. I know of two right now, and I won't go into it, but anyhow, there's a lot of history here. The next time I give this will probably be in a couple, 2 or 3 weeks, and I will be speaking on the ladies back in the Ladies' Aid of that time, who were quite instrumental in the organization of St. Paul's Church. So with that, I will say there is no test going to be taken later on. So anyhow, thank you so much for paying attention, and we'll keep going on with more history.